kiss the cold and those indoor activities goodbye and say hello to the sun. Tonight, tips for planning a day by the pool and details on a rooftop party you'll want to check out, plus the foods and exercises that keep that belly flat. And Saints fans, get ready for the cutest sports-themed bikinis you've ever seen. The 504 starts right now.
It's the 504 on My 54. Now, here's Sheba Turk.
Well, before you find the perfect bikini, you have to feel good about your body, of course, and no one feels good bloated. Thankfully, Julie Fortenberry with Touro Infirmary is back with tips for keeping that tummy flat during bikini season. Right. Welcome back to the 504, Julie. Yeah, this is the big one. You do not want to put on a bikini if your belly feels bloated.
No, especially if you worked all season to kind of get that extra layer off and then you feel bloated in your swimsuit. Nobody wants that.
And with all the exercise and being in shape, you can still feel like your belly's a little puffy. So you're saying diet can help you avoid that.
Diet is key.
Okay.
I think bloating is majority caused by foods that we consume or beverages. So it's just knowing what foods individually cause a problem for you and avoiding those foods.
Okay, and you say that limiting your salt intake is a big one.
Salt. The big issue with salt is water is attracted to salt. So anytime that we're eating salty foods, we're definitely picking up some of that extra fluid, and it's usually going to be in our stomach. So watch the obvious salty foods like pickles and soups, but be aware of the processed foods as well that we may be consuming, those frozen meals, healthy pretzel, cracker type things.
Right.
Just be aware of those sodium intake.
That's a good point, because you know if you eat something and you sprinkle salt on it, you're going to know it's salty, but sometimes you're eating something you think is healthy and it's actually salty.
Well, be aware, because a lot of times after you eat salt, your fingers are puffy or your eyes are puffy, and that's the same thing with your stomach. You'll just feel very bloated.
Oh, wow. Okay, so what if you do eat too much salt? Is it too late? You can never turn back?
No, I always just say flush it. Like if you've been to a crawfish boil, the next day you'll feel pretty bloated. Just flush it with a lot of water and try to sweat it out as much as you can.
Okay, drink lots of water and exercise. All right, and then avoid gassy foods as well.
Gassy foods. And I hate to say Brussels sprouts are so good for us, and that's something that we would normally enjoy eating on a daily basis. But gassy foods such as Brussels sprouts and broccoli and fried foods and obviously beans, again, they attract water to our gut, making us feel very bloated. So try to limit those on bikini days for sure.
All right, so none of that. Stay away from the catfish, the fried catfish on bikini days. And then carbonated beverages.
Carbonation is interesting because it's almost like the air has to go somewhere, and your stomach is a balloon, and so that air ends up in your stomach and you feel very distended and bloated after drinking carbonations. And that's something we do often this time of year, especially with mixers, is we use carbonation, and that may make you feel much larger than you actually are.
That's so interesting. We were talking earlier, a lot of people will drink a Sprite if they have an upset stomach, but you're saying that does not work for bloat.
Bloat, if you're trying to avoid bloat, carbonation is not the answer.
All right, stay away from it.
Yes.
Okay, and then excess carbohydrates.
I find as a dietitian, a lot of times people overeat carbohydrates. That's usually the staple of our food. Be aware of it, because a lot of the processed food, whether it's a natural carb or a processed carbohydrate, may tend to make you feel extra bloated.
Okay, so
be aware, eat what you need, but don't overdo yourself.
All right, and then we've got some snacks here, a lot of things that I eat on a
These are
daily
yours.
basis. And I was like, oh, these are the good ones. You said, no, these are the don'ts.
Well, this is what I find, and this is the key that I would want someone to take home from this. Everyone is very different. Some of my clients find that they're very bloated and distended the morning after they eat gluten or they drink dairy, and some of those foods are common intolerances. And so if you start paying attention to yourself and you notice when you eat processed foods or when you eat a plate of carbohydrates, whether it's bread or gluten or some sort of wheat, or you drink a glass of milk and your stomach is a little more distended than normal, start paying attention to yourself, because usually people have an intolerance to certain foods, and if they can avoid those foods, they end up feeling much flatter in the morning than they normally would.
Okay, so it kind of is about some things that are no's for everyone, but you're saying you have to pay attention to your own body as well.
And some common ones that I see with most of my clients do end up being milk, processed foods, and gluten. So if you watch yourself and you notice some mornings you're just not as flat as you normally are and you kind of feel like you have a little baby in there, it's probably something you've eaten, so just be aware of it.
All right, definitely. And so exercise, I'm sure, is important as well, no matter what you're eating.
Well, it's really interesting, because we're focusing on bloating, but if you haven't exercised and really gotten ready for the season, it doesn't matter how bloated you are, you're not going to feel your best. So it's a good idea to start now, start eating clean and healthy now, getting ready for those events in the future, and then pay attention to your bloating as well.
Gotcha. And as you mentioned some of your clients, these are kind of some quick things to avoid the day of. What do you tell people in the long run preparing for bikini season?
Be aware of the foods that you're eating. Start paying attention is the first thing. Most people really don't even know what they're eating. It's hard to recall what they ate for breakfast, which tells me they're not paying attention. So once somebody starts paying attention, maybe even food journaling, writing something down, setting yourself goals, those are things that are going to help you in the long run. They're going to keep you focused. If you know you have a vacation in 6 weeks, and you've got a deadline, you know that you can buckle down and really accomplish some goals within that 6 weeks if you dedicate yourself. So in the long run, nutrition is different for everybody, but I think if you can individually decide what works for you and pay attention to it and reach your goals, you're going to do very well.
All right, well, thank you so much for those tips. Got us ready for the swimsuits. All right, for more healthy eating tips, you can visit Touro.com.